Danny Carter wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at his watch. His shift was almost over. He had been moving cargo boxes for the past 8 hours on Nexus 7, a space station floating at the edge of known space. It was boring work, but it paid well enough. Danny was just a simple cargo hauler, nothing special. He had no dreams of being a hero or a soldier. He just wanted to finish his work, eat some hot food, and sleep in his small room. The station was busy that day. Ships came and went through the docking bay. Humans, aliens of different kinds, traders, and travelers all moved around like ants in a giant metal hive. Danny had been working on Nexus 7 for 3 years now. He knew most of the faces, most of the ships, and most of the routines. Nothing ever surprised him anymore. Or so he thought. The alarm came without warning, a loud, screaming sound that made everyone stop and look up. Red lights started flashing across the docking bay. Danny dropped his cargo scanner and looked toward the main viewing window. Something was wrong, very wrong. A small shuttle was spinning out of control just outside the station. It was coming in too fast, at a bad angle. Danny could see smoke coming from its engines. The shuttle was going to crash into the station's hull if someone did not do something quickly. People started running. Some ran toward safety. Others just stood frozen, watching the disaster about to happen. Danny looked around for the rescue teams, but they were too far away. They would never make it in time. Danny did not think, he just moved. He ran toward the maintenance pods. These were small vehicles used for repairs outside the station. They were slow and clumsy, not meant for rescue work, but they were the only thing close enough. Danny jumped into one and started the engine. His hands moved fast over the controls. He had used these pods many times before for simple jobs. He had never used one to save a life. The pod launched out of the bay and into open space. Danny could see the shuttle clearly now. It was small, with a strange design he did not recognize. The metal was silver with blue lines running across it. Definitely not a human ship, an alien vessel of some kind. Danny pushed the pod faster. The shuttle was spinning badly, its pilot clearly unable to control it. Danny brought his pod alongside and extended the mechanical arms. He grabbed onto the shuttle's hull and fired his reverse thrusters. The force nearly broke his pod apart. Every alarm inside his tiny vehicle started screaming at him, but Danny held on. Slowly, very slowly, the spinning stopped. Danny used what little fuel he had left to guide the shuttle toward the docking bay. His arms were shaking. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might explode, but he did not let go. When both vessels finally landed safely inside the bay, Danny sat still for a long moment. He could not believe what he had just done. People were running toward him now. Rescue teams, medical staff, station security. Everyone was shouting and moving around in chaos. Danny climbed out of his pod on shaking legs. He pushed through the crowd and made his way to the damaged shuttle. The door was stuck. Danny grabbed a metal tool from a nearby cart and forced it open. Inside, he found her. She was tall, much taller than any human woman. Her skin was a soft blue color like the sky on a clear Earth morning. Silver markings ran across her face and down her neck in beautiful patterns. Her eyes were closed. She was not moving. Danny checked for a pulse. He did not know if aliens had pulses in the same way humans did, but he tried anyway. He found something, a soft beating under his fingers. She was alive. He lifted her carefully. She was lighter than he expected. Danny carried her out of the shuttle and placed her gently on a medical stretcher. The doctors rushed her away immediately. Danny stood there covered in sweat and oil, watching them take her. He did not know who she was. He did not know what species she belonged to. He had never seen anyone like her before, but none of that mattered. She had needed help and he had helped. That was enough for him. A security officer walked up to him. "That was incredibly stupid," the officer said. "You could have died." Danny shrugged. "She would have died if I did nothing." The officer looked at him for a long moment, then shook his head and walked away. Danny went back to his quarters. He took a hot shower, ate a simple meal, and went to bed. Tomorrow would be another normal day of moving cargo boxes. At least, that was what he believed. In the medical bay, the blue-skinned woman opened her eyes. The doctors around her spoke in soft voices, explaining that she was safe. But she was not listening to them. She was thinking about the human who had carried her out of the shuttle. She had been awake enough to see his face, to feel his arms holding her gently. Her name was Lyra. She was not just any traveler. She was a princess of the Empire, one of the most powerful alien civilizations in the galaxy. Her people were proud and ancient. They believed in strict rules and traditions. They did not believe in kindness without reason. Yet this human had saved her life. He had risked everything for a stranger, and then he had simply walked away, expecting nothing in return. Lyra did not understand. Among her people, every action had a price. Every favor created a debt. No one did anything for free. But this human had looked at her with tired eyes and a small smile, and then he had just left. She asked the doctors about him. They told her his name was Danny Carter, a cargo hauler, nobody important, just a regular human doing a regular job. Lyra watched the door where he had disappeared. She did not know it yet, but her life was about to change forever, and so was his. Far away, on a massive warship traveling through deep space, a message arrived. It told of a shuttle accident. It told of a princess in danger, and it told of a human who had saved her. Queen Seraphine of the Empire read the message carefully. Her violet eyes glowed with a cold light. Her daughter had been touched by a human. According to their oldest laws, this created a bond that could not be ignored. The Queen gave a single command. The warship changed direction and began its journey toward Nexus 7. Danny Carter had no idea what was coming for him. 3 days passed like any other on Nexus 7. Danny went back to his normal life. He moved cargo boxes from one place to another. He ate his meals in the station cafeteria. He slept in his small room. The rescue felt like a distant dream now, something that had happened to someone else. People on the station talked about what he had done. Some called him brave, others called him stupid. Danny did not care much either way. He had done what felt right at the moment. There was nothing more to say about it. On the morning of the 4th day, everything changed. Danny was still in bed when the door to his room slid open with a loud hiss. 3 station security officers stood in the doorway. They wore serious expressions on their faces. Behind them stood 2 figures Danny had never seen before. They were tall, with blue skin and silver markings. Guards. They wore armor that looked both beautiful and deadly. Danny sat up slowly. "Can I help you?" "Danny Carter," one of the security officers said, "you need to come with us, right now." "What did I do?" Danny asked. Nobody answered him. The guards stepped forward and waited. Their eyes were cold and unblinking. Danny got dressed quickly and followed them out. They walked through the station in silence. People stopped and stared as they passed. Danny had never felt so uncomfortable in his life. He tried to ask questions, but the guards ignored him completely. They arrived at the main docking bay. Danny's heart nearly stopped when he saw what was waiting outside the station's windows. A warship, a massive warship. It was the biggest vessel Danny had ever seen. It made the station look like a small toy floating next to a mountain. The ship was covered in silver metal and glowing blue lights. It looked ancient and powerful, like something from a story about gods and monsters. Danny was escorted onto a smaller transport ship. The ride to the warship took only a few minutes, but it felt like hours. Danny sat in silence, his mind racing with questions he could not answer. When the transport landed inside the warship, Danny was led through long hallways made of strange metal that seemed to glow from within. Soldiers stood at every corner, watching him with curious eyes. Danny was just a cargo hauler in dirty work clothes. He clearly did not belong here. Finally, they reached a massive door covered in symbols Danny did not understand. The door opened slowly, revealing a throne room larger than any space Danny had ever seen. At the far end of the room sat Queen Seraphine. She was enormous, nearly 8 feet tall even while sitting. Her skin was a deeper blue than Lyra's, and her silver markings were more complex, covering her face like a living crown. Her eyes were violet and seemed to see right through Danny. She wore robes of pure white that flowed around her like water. Danny walked forward on shaking legs. The guard stopped at the entrance. He was alone now, walking toward the most powerful alien he had ever seen. Beside the queen stood Lyra. She was dressed in royal clothes now, nothing like the unconscious woman Danny had pulled from a broken shuttle. She looked beautiful and sad at the same time. She did not meet his eyes. Danny stopped about 10 feet from the throne. He had no idea what to do. Should he bow? Should he speak? Nobody had told him anything. The queen spoke first. Her voice was deep and strong. It filled the entire room like music. "You are the human called Danny Carter." It was not a question, but Danny nodded anyway. "Yes, that is me. 3 days ago you saved a life. You pulled a woman from a burning vessel. You carried her in your arms. You gave her to your healers." Danny swallowed hard. "I did. That woman is my daughter." The queen's violet eyes burned into him. "Princess Lyra of the Southern Territories, third heir to the Empire." Danny looked at Lyra. She still would not meet his eyes. Her face was filled with embarrassment. "I did not know," Danny said. "I just saw someone who needed help." The queen was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke again, and her words hit Danny like a punch to the stomach. "By the ancient laws of my people, anyone who saves a member of the royal family creates a life debt. This debt is sacred. It cannot be ignored. It cannot be paid with money or favors. There is only one way to settle it." Danny felt cold fear spreading through his body. "What way?" "Marriage." The queen stood up. She towered over Danny like a giant. "You will marry my daughter. You will join our family. You will become part of the empire." Danny stared at her. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked at Lyra again. This time she finally met his eyes. She looked just as shocked as he felt. "I am sorry," Danny finally managed to say, "but I think there has been a mistake. I did not save your daughter because I wanted anything. I just wanted to help. I do not expect any reward." The queen's eyes narrowed. "You do not understand, human. This is not a reward. This is a law, our oldest law. It has existed for 10,000 years. It cannot be broken." Danny felt panic rising in his chest. This could not be happening. He was just a cargo hauler. He was nobody. He could not marry an alien princess. He could not join an empire. He just wanted to go back to his small room and his simple life. "Is there a form I can fill out to decline?" Danny asked. The room went completely silent. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. Then very slowly the queen's expression changed. Her eyes grew colder. Her voice grew harder. "You refuse." "I am not refusing to help," Danny said quickly. "I already helped. The help is done. I do not want anything in return. I am happy that your daughter is safe. That is enough for me." The queen stared at him for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was like ice. "In 10,000 years, no one has ever refused a life debt. What you are doing is an insult to my daughter, an insult to my family, an insult to my entire empire." Danny stood his ground, even though every part of him wanted to run. "I did not mean to insult anyone. I just do not think saving someone should come with conditions. Where I come from, we help each other because it is the right thing to do, not because we expect something in return." The queen sat back down on her throne. Her face was unreadable now. "You are either the bravest human I have ever met," she said softly, "or the most foolish. Either way, you have created a problem, and problems must be solved." She raised her hand, and the guards entered the room again. You will remain on this ship until we decide what to do with you. You will be treated as a guest, not a prisoner, but you will not leave." Danny wanted to argue, but he knew it would not help. He let the guards lead him away. As he left the throne room, he looked back one last time. Lyra was watching him now, and for just a moment he thought he saw something in her eyes, something like respect. But it was gone before he could be sure. Danny sat alone in his guest room on the warship. The room was beautiful, filled with soft lights and strange furniture that seemed to float above the floor. It was probably worth more than everything Danny had ever owned in his entire life. But to him, it was still a prison. He had been stuck here for 2 days now. Guards stood outside his door at all times. They brought him food and water, but they would not let him leave. They would not even talk to him. Danny spent most of his time staring out the window at the stars and wondering how his life had gone so wrong so quickly. Back on Nexus 7, his friend Pete was trying to help. Pete was a fellow cargo hauler, a loud man with a big heart. When he heard what had happened to Danny, he nearly lost his mind with anger. He spent hours sending messages to anyone who might listen. Station commanders, trade union leaders, even Earth's government. Finally, someone answered. Ambassador Grant arrived at Nexus 7 on the third day. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had spent 30 years dealing with alien civilizations. She had seen things that would break most people, but even she looked worried when she heard about Danny's situation. "They are one of our most important allies," she told Pete in her office. "They control half the trade routes in this sector. If we insult them, the consequences could be serious." "So you are just going to let them take Danny?" Pete demanded. "He did not do anything wrong. He saved a life. That is supposed to be a good thing." "I know," said, "and I am going to do everything I can to help him. But I need you to understand that this will not be simple. Their laws are very different from ours. To them, what Danny did created a bond that cannot be ignored." "That is crazy." "To us, yes. To them it is sacred." Traveled to the warship to meet with Queen Seraphine. The Queen received her in the throne room, surrounded by guards and advisors. The atmosphere was tense. Both sides knew that a wrong word could destroy years of peaceful relations. "Your human has insulted my family," the Queen said. "He has refused a life debt. This has never happened before." "With respect, Your Majesty," replied carefully, "Danny Carter did not know your laws. He acted according to human customs. In our culture, saving a life does not create obligations. It is simply considered the right thing to do." "Then your culture is strange to us. How can you function without debt and obligation? How do you maintain order?" "We try to help each other because we care about each other, not because we expect something in return." The Queen was silent for a moment. Her advisors whispered among themselves. Finally, she spoke again. "I do not understand this, but I am willing to listen. However, my laws cannot simply be ignored. We must find a solution that satisfies both our peoples." The negotiations began. They lasted for hours, argued that Danny should be released without conditions. The Queen insisted that the life debt must be honored in some way. Neither side would give ground. While the talks continued, something else was happening in another part of the ship. Lyra came to visit Danny. The guards let her pass without question. She was the princess, after all. She could go wherever she wanted. She entered Danny's room quietly and stood near the door looking uncertain. Danny stood up from his floating chair. "Princess Lyra." "Please, just Lyra." She walked closer, her silver markings catching the light. "I wanted to speak with you, alone." Danny nodded. "I am listening." Lyra took a deep breath. "I want to apologize for my mother, for this whole situation. I never wanted any of this. I did not ask to be saved, and I certainly did not ask for you to be forced into marriage." "I know," Danny said. "None of this is your fault. But it is happening because of me, because you helped me." Lyra looked at him with curious eyes. Why did you do it? Why did you risk your life for a stranger? Danny thought about the question. It was the same question everyone kept asking him, but he had never really tried to explain it properly. Where I grew up, he said slowly, my father was a firefighter. He spent his whole life running into burning buildings to save people he had never met. One day, he did not come out. The building collapsed and he died inside. Lyra's expression softened. I am sorry. Do not be. He died doing what he believed in. He always told me that helping others is not about getting rewards or creating debts. It is about being the kind of person you want to be. When I saw your shuttle spinning toward the station, I did not think about what I might get out of saving you. I just thought about what kind of person I would be if I did nothing. Lyra stared at him for a long moment. That is, I have never heard anyone talk like that. My people do not think that way. Everything we do is based on exchange. Favor for favor, debt for debt. The idea of giving something without expecting anything in return is completely foreign to us. Maybe that is something worth learning about, Danny said with a small smile. Lyra smiled back. It was the first time Danny had seen her smile. It made her look younger, less like a princess and more like a regular person. Maybe it is, she agreed. They talked for hours after that. Danny told her about Earth, about humans, about the strange and wonderful things his people did for each other every day. He told her about organ donors who gave parts of their bodies to save strangers, about volunteers who traveled to disaster zones to help rebuild, about ordinary people who risked everything for people they would never meet again. Lyra listened to every word. Her eyes grew wider with each story. She had lived her whole life in a world where kindness always came with a price. The idea that kindness could be its own reward was revolutionary to her. I want to help you, she said finally. I will talk to my mother. I will try to make her understand. You would do that for me? Danny asked. Lyra nodded. Consider it my first lesson in human behavior, helping someone because it is the right thing to do. Danny laughed. It was the first time he had laughed since this whole mess started. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope after all. In the throne room, the negotiations had reached a dead end. Ambassador and Queen Seraphine stared at each other across the room, neither willing to back down. But neither of them knew that the real solution was being found elsewhere. In a small guest room, a cargo hauler and a princess were learning to understand each other. And understanding, as it turned out, would change everything. The days passed slowly on the warship. The negotiations between Ambassador and Queen Seraphine continued, but they made little progress. The Queen refused to release Danny without some form of debt payment. The Ambassador refused to force Danny into a marriage he did not want. Both sides were stuck, and the tension grew worse with each passing day. But something else was growing too, something neither side expected. Lyra visited Danny every day now. At first, the guards watched her carefully. They did not understand why the princess was spending so much time with the human prisoner. But Lyra was royalty, and no one dared question her choices. She became Danny's guide to the world. She showed him their art, their music, their history. She explained their customs and traditions. Danny learned that the empire was over 50,000 years old. They had built great cities, conquered vast territories, and created wonders that humans could barely imagine. But they had also built their entire society on one simple idea: everything has a price. When a child is born, Lyra explained one evening, the parents calculate the cost of raising them. Food, education, protection. When the child grows up, they must repay this debt before they can be considered truly free. Danny shook his head in disbelief. Children owe their parents for being born. Of course, how else would balance be maintained? Where I come from, parents raise children because they love them, not because they expect repayment. Lyra frowned. But love is not measurable. How can you build a society on something that cannot be measured? Danny smiled. That is exactly the point. Some things are more valuable because they cannot be measured. Love, kindness, sacrifice. If you try to put a price on them, they lose their meaning. Lyra thought about this for a long time. The idea was so different from everything she had been taught. Her whole life, she had believed that value came from exchange. Now this strange human was telling her that some things were valuable precisely because they could not be exchanged. She began to share these conversations with others on the ship, her personal guards, her servants, even some of the advisors. At first, they laughed at the human ideas, but as Lyra explained more and more, some of them began to listen seriously. One story in particular caught their attention. Danny told them about a human doctor from long ago. Her name was, and she had worked in a poor village where a terrible disease was killing people every day. Spent years developing a cure. When she finally succeeded, a rich company offered to buy her formula for an enormous amount of money. They wanted to sell the cure at high prices that only wealthy people could afford. Refused. She gave the formula away for free to everyone who needed it. She saved millions of lives and earned nothing in return. She died poor and forgotten, but the cure she created still saved people hundreds of years later. They could not understand this story at first. Why would someone give away something so valuable? Why would someone choose poverty over wealth? It made no logical sense. But then Lyra asked them a different question. Which would you rather be remembered for? Being rich for one lifetime or saving millions of lives forever? The room went silent. Danny told them other stories too, about a man who jumped into a frozen river to save a stranger's child, about a woman who donated one of her kidneys to someone she had never met, about soldiers who threw themselves on explosives to protect their friends, about ordinary people who did extraordinary things, not for fame or money, but simply because someone needed help. Humans are strange, one of the guards said after listening to several of these stories. You help each other even when it hurts you. You sacrifice yourselves for strangers. Do you not fear death? Of course we fear death, Danny replied. But sometimes there are things more important than our own survival, protecting the people we care about, standing up for what is right, being the kind of person we can be proud of. These things matter more than living a long and safe life. The guard thought about this. In his culture, self-preservation was considered the highest virtue. The idea of deliberately risking death for others was almost unthinkable. And yet, there was something beautiful about it, something noble that his own culture had lost somewhere along the way. Word of these conversations spread through the ship. More and more came to listen to Danny's stories. Some of them argued with him. Some of them laughed at him. But many of them began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was something valuable in the human way of thinking. Lyra watched all of this with growing hope. She saw her people beginning to change, beginning to question things they had never questioned before, and she knew it was time to try something bold. She requested a private audience with her mother. Queen Seraphine received her daughter in her personal chambers. The room was smaller than the throne room but still grand beyond anything humans would consider normal. The queen sat by a window, looking out at the stars. "You have been spending much time with the human," the queen said. Her voice was neutral, neither angry nor pleased. "I have," Lyra admitted, "and I have learned much from him." What could a cargo hauler possibly teach a princess of the empire? Lyra sat down across from her mother. "He has taught me that there are other ways to live, other ways to see value in the world. His people help each other without expecting payment. They sacrifice for strangers. They give freely, asking nothing in return." The queen's violet eyes studied her daughter carefully. "And you believe this?" "I have seen the way our people react to his stories, mother. Something in his words touches them, makes them think. Maybe we have been so focused on balance and exchange that we forgot there is another way." The queen was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. When I was young, my grandmother told me stories about the early days of our empire, before the laws of debt were written. She said our ancestors helped each other freely without counting costs. She said they were happier then. Lyra leaned forward. Then you understand. I understand more than you know, child. The queen looked out the window again. But understanding is not the same as acting. I am bound by laws that are older than my grandmother's grandmother. I cannot simply ignore them. Perhaps the laws need to change, Lyra said quietly. The queen turned to look at her daughter with something like surprise in her eyes. For a moment, she said nothing. Then slowly, a small smile appeared on her ancient face. Perhaps they do. Bring the human to me tomorrow. I wish to speak with him again. But this time I will listen differently. Lyra felt hope rising in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, everything was about to change. Danny stood before Queen Seraphine for the second time, but everything felt different now. The throne room was the same with its towering walls and glowing symbols. The guards stood in the same positions. The queen sat on the same ancient throne, but the air had changed. The cold tension from before was gone, replaced by something Danny could not quite name. Lyra stood beside her mother this time, not below the throne like before. Ambassador was there too, watching with careful eyes. Even Pete had been allowed to come, standing nervously near the back of the room with his arms crossed. The queen studied Danny for a long moment. Her violet eyes were still powerful, still ancient, but there was something softer in them now. Human, she began. Danny Carter, I have been thinking about you for many days now. Danny nodded. And I have been thinking about you, your majesty, and about your people. My daughter tells me you have shared many stories with those aboard this ship. Stories about human kindness, about sacrifice without reward, about helping strangers simply because they need help. I have, Danny said. I wanted your people to understand why I did what I did. I wanted them to see that I never meant any disrespect. The queen raised her hand. Let me speak. Danny went silent. For 10,000 years, my empire has been built on laws of debt and exchange. We believed this was the highest form of civilization. We believed that putting a price on everything created order and fairness. But I have begun to wonder if we were wrong. The room was completely quiet. Every present held their breath. No one had ever heard the queen speak like this before. Your stories have spread through my ship like fire, the queen continued. My guards whisper about the human doctor who gave away her cure. My servants talk about the man who jumped into frozen water to save a child he did not know. My advisors argue late into the night about whether such behavior is foolish or noble. Danny did not know what to say. He had just been talking, sharing stories he had grown up with. He never imagined they would have such an effect. I have lived a very long time, the queen said. I have seen many things, I have met many species, but I have never met anyone quite like you humans. You are weak compared to many races. Your lives are short. Your bodies are fragile. And yet you have something that stronger species do not have, something that cannot be measured or purchased. She paused, letting her words sink in. You have the ability to care about others without asking what you will receive in return. This is not weakness. This is a kind of strength my people forgot long ago. Danny felt a strange warmth spreading through his chest. He had never thought of himself as special. He was just a cargo hauler who did what felt right. But hearing the queen speak like this made him see things differently. I have made a decision, the queen announced. The life debt between Danny Carter and Princess Lyra is hereby satisfied. A murmur ran through the room. Even Lyra looked surprised. The debt is paid, the queen continued, not through marriage, not through service, but through the gift Danny has already given. He has shown my people a new way of thinking. He has planted a seed that will grow for generations to come. This is worth more than any marriage could ever be. Danny felt relief wash over him like a wave. He was free. He could go home. But somehow he also felt a little sad. He had grown used to this strange ship and its strange people. He had grown used to talking with Lyra every day. The Queen was not finished. Furthermore, I am announcing a new initiative. The Empire will establish a cultural exchange program with humanity. We wish to learn more about your ways. We wish to understand this concept you call altruism. Perhaps, in time, we can find a balance between our traditions and your virtues. Ambassador stepped forward with a smile on her face. On behalf of humanity, Your Majesty, we are honored to accept. The formal parts of the ceremony continued, but Danny stopped paying attention. He was looking at Lyra, who was looking back at him with bright eyes and a soft smile. When everything was finally over, people began to leave the throne room. Pete rushed over and grabbed Danny in a tight hug. "You crazy fool," Pete laughed. "Only you could start an intergalactic incident by saving someone's life." Danny laughed too. "I did not plan any of this." That is exactly what makes it so funny. As the crowd thinned, Lyra approached. She looked different now. Not like a princess or a prisoner of tradition, but like a young woman who had just discovered something wonderful about the universe. "So," she said, "you are free to leave." Danny nodded. "I am." "Will you go back to moving cargo boxes?" Danny thought about it. A week ago, that was all he wanted. A simple life with simple problems. But now, after everything that had happened, he was not so sure. "Maybe," he said, "but I think my life might be a little more complicated now." Lyra smiled. "I hope so, because I was wondering if perhaps you might want to stay in touch, not because of any debt or obligation, but because I genuinely enjoy talking with you." Danny felt his heart beat a little faster. "You mean it?" "I do. Consider it my way of practicing human behavior, building a friendship without expecting anything in return." Danny grinned. "I think I would like that very much." They stood together, looking out the window at the stars. Behind them, the two civilizations were already beginning to work together. Humans and learning from each other, growing together. It was the start of something new, something beautiful. And it had all started because one ordinary man decided to help a stranger. As Danny finally returned to Nexus 7, he found that he had become something of a celebrity. People stopped him in the hallways to shake his hand. News networks wanted to interview him. Politicians wanted to use his story for their campaigns. Danny turned them all down. He went back to his small room, ate a simple meal, and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, a princess was looking at the same stars, thinking about him. He smiled to himself. He had never wanted to be a hero. He still did not think of himself as one. But maybe that was exactly what made him special. In a universe full of people calculating costs and benefits, he had simply done what was right without thinking about what he would get in return. And in doing so, he had changed not just one life, but two entire civilizations. His father would have been proud. Danny closed his eyes and let himself dream. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new adventures, and new chances to help people who needed it, and he would face them all the same way he always had. By simply being human. The stars burned on forever, watching silently as one small man proved that kindness was the most powerful force in the universe. Not because it conquered or destroyed, but because it connected. It brought strangers together. It turned enemies into friends. It reminded everyone, human and alien alike, that we are all part of something bigger than ourselves. And that was enough. That was more than enough.